This is amazing. Donald Trump at war with ABC News now. Actually going so far as to say, maybe the whole network should be shut down because they have to have certain licenses, broadcast licenses. I mean, it's an interesting point. You know me. I don't believe in ever shutting down speech. I really don't. I believe that the cure to bad speech is actually more speech. It's one of the reasons why I love this platform right here, because we've been growing and growing and growing thanks to all of your support. Thank you for that. We're up over 350,000 now, and that's thanks to your enthusiasm. So no, I don't believe that we should be shutting down speech in any way. But here's the thing, any kind of extra whatever you get from the government, you maybe don't deserve ABC because you clearly are biased. I mean, that was so evident. I mean, it was nauseating how much bias was on stage there. And so Donald Trump is out swinging. Here he is on Fox saying, to heck with that network. Let's listen.
As I heard the word, it's sort of a vicious word, but referring to the economy, they have created an economy. Bloodbath was the word that I used, and it was fine in that context. And they were trying to make it sound like there was a riot or something, and it was a bloodbath. IVF, I was a leader on IVF, the IVF, which is fertilization. I was a total leader on that. When I first heard about it, like right from the beginning, I was one of...
In this case, he's referring to all of her lies, but let me go back to a little bit earlier on, because I think that we do have him saying, look, the whole thing should be shut down. Here we go.
The lies that she said about you, listen.
A detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing. Couples who pray and...
None of this was fact-checked, by the way. None of it. I mean, they were all over Donald Trump, but nothing got fact-checked.
Dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. If Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath. If this and the outcome...
Incidentally, he was referring to the economy, right? Like they talk about a bloodbath on Wall Street, right? Because he was talking about what would happen if Mexico continued sending everybody, he was talking about tariffs, et cetera, and how he would put all these tariffs in and that there would be severe economic consequences. Anyway, she went on, and he said...
Economy, what's your reaction to... Why didn't the moderators correct her?
Because they're dishonest, and because I think ABC took a big hit last night. I mean, to be honest, they're a news organization. They have to be licensed to do it. They ought to take away their license for the way they did that. Bloodbath was referring to the economy. Everybody loved the term because as soon as they heard the word, it's sort of a vicious
Anyway, what's
word.
Fascinating there is what he's talking about. And this is what they're all worried about, right? So he has to be cautious on that, because the minute you start saying, I'm going to take away their license, and they start getting really, really ornery, and they're, he's a dictator, et cetera, et cetera. That's not really the case. By the way, I would only point out that during the Trump administration, reporters were actually told off straight to their faces by him. Remember the squabbles and stuff that Jim Acosta and he would get into from CNN, versus, say, the Kamala Harris Biden administration, or the Obama administration for that matter, which actually would work aggressively. And this has all come out. Thank you very much, Mark Zuckerberg. It's all come out to suppress stories that they didn't like making the rounds. And they would effectively say, this is disinformation, and intimidate people into squashing these stories, something that Mark Zuckerberg admitted to in a recent letter to Jim Jordan on the Oversight Committee, and said that he indeed regretted. The other problem with both the recent Democrat administrations is that they actually, in some cases, were aggressively going after journalists. I mean, Cheryl Atkinson, who I used to work with, as well as there was a reporter, Jim Rosen at Fox, who had this issue, both with the Obama administration. Then Matt Taibbi has the IRS from Biden-Harris showing up on his doorstep on the day that he's supposed to testify about Twitter. I mean, this is wild, right? None of that happened actually with Donald Trump. I know the fellow who ran digital for the White House, and I've talked to him at length about some of these things that happened. And what did happen during the Biden administration was they aggressively tried to arm wrestle a lot of companies to make sure that certain stories were suppressed. So when it comes to freedom of the press, I think once again, you can go back and look at 4 years where we had it, and then you can look at 3.5 years, plus the other 8 years where we really didn't. So that's concerning.